To finish our videos this week, we're going to look at a couple of general points that will give you some good assistance in choosing and selecting the most appropriate of the entry modes for your firm. And the first key factor that we're going to look at here is in relation to your firm's core competencies. Oh God, the gags are getting worse and worse. So as it says here, the optimal entry mode will depend, at least to some extent, on the nature of your firm's core competencies. If you can recall from last week, core competencies are those things that provide the firms with a source of competitive advantage. It's usually what it does better than its rivals and is typically, according to Michael Porter, rare, inimitable, non-substitutable, and valuable as well. And what research has indicated is that when your competitive advantage, that is based on your core competencies, is based on proprietary technological know-how, so it's key knowledge about processes and technology here, it is going to be best to avoid licensing and joint ventures and also probably franchising unless the technological advantage is only transitory or can be established as the dominant design. The overall idea here, of course, is that you don't get the control over that technological know-how and the knowledge-based assets that your firm is seeking to maintain control over if you're going through options like licensing, franchising, or joint ventures. There are some exceptions which, as we say, if you believe that that technological advantage will soon be copied by your competitors, that is, it's going to be a transitory advantage, then licensing may still be a viable option because it won't matter if you lose control, given that it's likely to be copied soon anyway. Or if you can establish it as the key dominant design through licensing in particular, then that means that you won't have to worry so much about the control there either. On the other hand, when your competitive advantage is based on management know-how, then licensing and joint ventures and franchising become much more viable options. Now, the reason why this is the case is that in instances of management know-how based competitive advantage, the risk of losing control over those management skills that provide you with the advantage is not high, and that's usually because it's quite difficult to copy management skills. They're often actually contained within particular employees, or if it's relating to things like brand names, again, they're usually protected by things like patents or intellectual property rights, which makes it difficult to be stolen or copied by your competitors in most countries, at least around the world. So franchising then is often a great, and licensing and joint ventures become great options here. And if anything, being able to spread that brand name around the world becomes quite important, and franchising, licensing and joint ventures are a great way to do that. Finally here, we need to look at cost reductions and responsiveness, those key pressures that we spoke about last week as underpinning tenets of strategy in international business, and how this affects entry mode choice as well. So what we tend to find is that when the pressure for cost reductions is quite high, which of course means that you're more likely to pursue a global strategy, the firms are also more likely to pursue some combination of exporting and wholly owned subsidiaries. The reason why is because this allows a firm to achieve location and scale economies through exporting in particular, and also retain some control over product manufacturing and distribution. Now that might be if it's with exporting because you continue to manufacture in your own home market, or if it's a wholly owned subsidiary, then you get that benefit of being able to control what happens in the foreign operations, and obviously that facilitates things like location economies as well. Firms also are able to pursue global standardization or transnational strategies, as we spoke about, if you're looking at high pressures for cost reduction, and that in turn does end up suiting the wholly owned subsidiaries as that most appropriate form of entry mode. And this is because the control that is afforded through the wholly owned subsidiaries means that it's easy to not only standardize your products, which can then be offered all around the world in line with the global standardization strategy or a transnational strategy, but it also means that you can divert your funding from one area to another. So if you need to take some of the profits from one area of your global network that's doing well to prop up an underperforming section, then having wholly owned subsidiaries is much easier to do that than, for example, something like licensing, where we spoke previously about how everyone is in it for their own individual reasons as licensees. So these are some key points to be aware of when you do go about that crucial decision about which entry mode is going to be most appropriate for your firm.